The cherry red sports car parked on the slate driveway I had paid for told me everything before I even unlocked the door. Inside, he gave me 72 hours to vanish from his house while a stranger wore my silk robe. I did not cry. I simply nodded. He believes he is evicting a helpless wife, but he has actually just walked into the final hour of his own career. My name is Brianna Caldwell, and at 35 years old, I thought I had calculated every possible risk my marriage could produce. I was wrong. The cherry red sports car parked aggressively on the slate driveway, the one I had paid $14,000 to repave just last spring, was a variable I had not accounted for in my schedule, but it was certainly one I recognized. It sat there like a fresh wound against the gray stone, screaming for attention. I did not slam the car door. I did not storm up the steps. I walked into the house with the same measured pace I used when entering a boardroom. The kitchen was bathed in the golden afternoon light that poured in from the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Silver Pine Lake. It was a beautiful space, clean and modern, designed to project success. Gavin Cross, the man I had built from a chaotic startup founder into a polished CEO, sat on a bar stool with the relaxed arrogance of a king in his castle. He was not alone. Standing next to him, leaning against the granite island I had selected, was Sloane Kerr. She was younger than the photos in the tabloids suggested, and she was wearing my vintage silk robe, the one with the hand-painted cranes I had bought during our anniversary trip to Kyoto. In her hand was my favorite crystal tumbler, the rim stained with a garish shade of pink lipstick. Gavin did not jump. He did not look guilty. He looked at me like I was a calendar notification he had meant to dismiss hours ago. "Brianna," he said, his voice smooth and practiced. "You are back early." He took a sip of his drink, the ice clinking softly. "It saves me the trouble of waiting until the weekend. We are done." The air in the room seemed to freeze. Sloane giggled, a sharp, brittle sound that grated against my nerves. She looked me up and down, her eyes full of performative pity. "So this is the famous Brianna." "Cartwell Coldwell." She turned to Gavin, tracing a finger down his arm. "You said she looked sterner. She just looks like an admin, or one of those people who handle the paperwork in the basement." I ignored her. My eyes stayed locked on Gavin. He placed a hand on Sloane's arm, claiming her, claiming the moment. "It is about optics. Brianna, Lumenvale is entering a new phase. We are going global. I need vitality. I need allure. You have been great for the back end, really, but I need a partner who matches the brand image." He leaned forward, his face hardening. "You have 72 hours. Pack your things and get out of Arbor Crest." "Don't make me change the locks or unleash the legal team. You know you cannot win against my resources. I will bury you in litigation until you are bankrupt." I looked at the view of the lake. I looked at the man who thought he owned it. My heart rate did not spike. My hands did not shake. I felt a strange, cold clarity settle over me, like the quiet before a demolition charge detonates. "Okay," I said. The single word hung in the air. Gavin blinked. He had expected screaming. He had expected me to throw things or beg for a second chance. My acceptance unsettled him for a second, but then his massive ego filled the gap. He smirked, relieved. "Good," he said. "At least you are being sensible for once." I turned and walked out of the kitchen, past the foyer, and up the floating staircase. I did not go to the master bedroom to pack clothes. I went to my home office and locked the heavy oak door behind me. I placed my briefcase on the desk and clicked the latches open. Inside sat the files I had been curating for 3 years. I was not here to pack. I was here to execute. I picked up my burner phone, the one Gavin knew nothing about. I dialed a number I had memorized long ago. Daphne Rourke answered on the second ring. "Brianna." I stared at the wall where my diploma used to hang, my voice steady and devoid of warmth. "Initiate protocol, exit mirror," I said. I hung up the phone. Downstairs. I could hear them laughing, the sound of champagne corks popping as they celebrated their victory. Gavin thinks he just evicted me from his home. He has no idea that he just clocked in for the final, brutal hour of his own career. People say trust is the foundation of a marriage, but where I grew up on a dusty farm near Salina, Kansas, we knew better. In Salina, a promise made without a notary stamp was just wind, and out there, the wind blew hard enough to strip the paint off a barn. I learned the physics of betrayal when I was 17 years old. I had spent 6 months building a sustainability project that was supposed to be my ticket to a full-ride scholarship. I shared every draft, every calculation, and every dream with my best friend. 2 days before the submission deadline, she turned in a project that was identical to mine, right down to the unique irrigation formatting I had invented. When I sat in the principal's office, shaking with the kind of rage that makes your teeth ache, I expected justice. Instead, Principal Henderson looked at me over his wire-rimmed spectacles and sighed. "Brianna, I believe you are upset," he said, his voice maddeningly calm. But she submitted the file first. "Unless you can show me a dated logs or a registered copyright, where is the proof I had none? I had trust, and trust cost me $40,000 in tuition. My mother, a woman who balanced the farm's ledger with a ruthlessness that terrified the local seed salesman, found me crying in the truck. She did not hug me. She grabbed my chin and forced me to look at her weathered face. "Stop it," she said sharply. "Crying does not put your name on the deed. Listen to me. You sign your own life. Do not ever let anyone else hold the pen for you. If it is not on paper, it did not happen." That afternoon, the naive girl from the plains died. In her place, the archivist was born. I stopped keeping diaries of my feelings and started keeping logs of my reality. I saved every email. I scanned every receipt. I learned that the track changes feature in a document was more honest than any human being could ever be. While other girls in college were partying, I was studying risk management and compliance. I understood early that power in this country does not belong to the loudest voice in the room. It belongs to the person who can produce the time-stamped PDF when the subpoena arrives. I met Gavin 6 years ago at a startup mixer in Chicago that smelled of stale beer and desperation. He was standing on a crate, captivating a circle of investors with a pitch that was 70% buzzwords and 30% charisma. He was electric. He was handsome in that sharp, hungry way that makes you forget to check your wallet. But I was watching the room. I noticed that every time an investor asked about the burn rate or the acquisition cost, Gavin would flash a blinding smile and pivot to a story about vision and disruption. He was all engine and no steering wheel. I should have walked away. Instead, I felt a pull that defied my logic. I saw a man who was going to crash, and my instinct was not to flee, but to fix. I convinced myself that I could be the concrete foundation for his sky-high ambitions. I told myself that he needed my order to survive his own chaos. When we started dating, he called me his rock. He loved that I handled the bills, the reservations, and the contracts. He never asked why I insisted on using my email for the utilities or why I filed our taxes separately the first year. When he got down on one knee in that crowded restaurant to propose, with a ring that likely cost more than his company's entire quarterly revenue, I said yes. But as he slid the diamond onto my finger, my heart was not fluttering with romance. My mind was already scanning the terms and conditions of our future. I kissed him, and I meant it. I wanted a life with him. I wanted the house, the family, and the success. But as I looked into his eyes, hearing him promise to love and cherish me until death did us part, I could hear my mother's voice in my ear. "I love you, Gavin," I whispered against his lips. "I love you more," he replied. "I would give you everything." "I know," I said, pulling him close. I loved him. I truly did. But I never stopped backing up the data. 3 years ago, I resigned from a senior risk assessment position at a major bank to take on the most exhausting job of my life, saving my marriage to Gavin Cross. He had framed it as a partnership decision. He told me that for him to soar, he needed a runway that was perfectly paved, swept, and lit. So, I became the ground crew. I cleared his schedule, redesigned our home to look like a magazine spread, and curated an image of domestic perfection that would appeal to the family values investors he was courting. Gavin was the CEO of Lumen Vale Group, a media technology company that traded on buzzwords and charisma. To the outside world, he was a visionary, a future billionaire who could sell ice to a polar bear. He lived for the applause, the valuation estimates, and the headlines. But inside the house, I knew the truth. Lumen Vale was a balloon constantly leaking air, and Gavin was frantically blowing into it to keep it afloat. While he was busy selling the dream, I was quietly building a reality he knew nothing about. I had launched my own boutique consultancy, Caldwell Ledger and Compliance. I worked from the guest room while he was at the office, conducting forensic fraud audits and compliance checks for mid-sized firms. My clients paid in real money, not stock options, and they paid on time. Gavin, of course, dismissed my work entirely. "Babe, put the laptop away," he would say, waving a hand dismissively as he adjusted his cufflinks before a gala. "Nobody wants to hear about spreadsheets and tax codes tonight. It kills the vibe. Just look pretty and laugh at the jokes." Okay, I would close the laptop, smile my practiced smile, and say, "Of course, Gavin, I would not want to bore the genius table." He never heard the sarcasm. He only saw the compliance. To Gavin, optics were oxygen. The car had to be the latest model, the suit had to be bespoke, and the wife had to be flawless. But over the last 6 months, I had started to feel like an accessory that was going out of season. He stopped looking at me with admiration and started looking at me with critique. "You are wearing that," he asked one evening before a dinner with potential angel investors. "It makes you look old. We need fresh energy. Brianna." I changed the dress, but I also opened a new file on my encrypted drive. The signs of his infidelity were not subtle. They were financial. Gavin was sloppy because he was arrogant. He believed he was the smartest person in the room, so he assumed I was not paying attention to the details. But I saw everything. I noticed the dinner charges at French bistros that started at 10 o'clock at night on Tuesdays. I saw the hotel bill from his solo business trip to Austin that included a charge for a couple's Serenity Spa package. Who takes a venture capitalist for a rose petal foot soak? I did not scream. I did not throw the vase against the wall. I did not ask him who she was. Instead, I opened my spreadsheet. I cross-referenced his calendar with the credit card statements. I matched the dates of his alleged board meetings with the location data he had foolishly left active on the shared tablet. I was not looking for smoke. I was waiting for the bullet. Then, 3 weeks ago, I found it. It was a concierge charge for a flower delivery to a private table at a club in Manhattan. The note in the special request field had not been scrubbed from the digital receipt. It read, "Make sure Sloane Kerr gets the seat facing the skyline." I stared at the name. Sloane Kerr. It sounded sharp, modern, and expensive. Exactly the kind of rebrand Gavin was looking for. I did not cry. I simply pressed print. I took the warm sheet of paper from the printer tray, punched 3 holes in the side, and walked over to my bookshelf. I pulled down a thick black binder I had labeled Crown Line. I snapped the rings open, inserted the page, and snapped them shut with a satisfying click. Gavin looks at me and sees a wife who irons his shirts and manages his schedule. He thinks I am the cleaner, but I am the auditor. The glow of my dual monitors was the only light in the room as I dissected the digital carcass of my husband's lies. I logged into the back end of the corporate American Express account, the one Gavin had foolishly linked to our joint travel rewards program to accumulate points for a first-class upgrade he would never use with me. I drilled down into the transaction details tab, bypassing the surface-level summaries. There it was. a charge for $5,200 at a resort in Turks and Caicos. The invoice detail, which most people never bother to expand, listed oceanfront suite double occupancy and a couple's rejuvenation package. This charge was dated 3 weeks ago during the exact window Gavin claimed to be at a strategic leadership summit in windy Chicago. I opened a second window and pulled up Sloane Kerr's public social media profile. She was not smart enough to scrub her metadata. I cross-referenced the dates. While Gavin was supposedly in a conference room discussing synergy, Sloane had posted a photo of a sunset cocktail with the caption, "Paradise Found." The geotag was not Chicago. It was Providenciales. I kept digging, my fingers flying across the mechanical keyboard. I noticed a recurring monthly wire transfer of $3,500 to an entity called Azure Sky Consulting, a limited liability company registered in Delaware just 2 months ago. It had no website, no LinkedIn presence, and no tax history. It was a shell, a clumsy pipeline to siphon marital funds into Sloane's pocket. Then, I navigated to our home network's shared drive. Gavin was brilliant at selling concepts, but lazy with data hygiene. He treated our terabyte server like a digital junk drawer. I searched for Azure and found nothing. Then I searched for Sloane. A single file appeared in a folder mislabeled Old Tax Docs. The file name was Sloane K Final ePDF. I double-clicked it. It was a commercial lease agreement for a luxury loft in the downtown Arts District, coupled with a startup business loan document. I scrolled to the bottom, past the legal jargon, to the signature page. My breath hitched in my throat. Under the section titled Personal Guarantor, my name was printed clearly, and next to it was my signature. I leaned in closer, zooming in to 400%. At first glance, it was perfect. The loop of the B, the sharp cross of the T. But I knew my hand better than anyone. I looked at the pressure points where the ink from the digital stylus would have pooled. The tail of the last A was too abrupt. I finished my signature with a slight upward flick. This one trailed off flat. "You idiot," I whispered to the empty room. "You did not just cheat. You committed a felony." He had forged my signature to secure a loan for his mistress, anchoring me to a debt of $80,000 if she defaulted. He was betting his exit strategy on my credit score. I did not print it immediately. First, I created a forensic copy of the file, preserving the created by metadata that tagged Gavin's user profile. I saved it to 3 separate encrypted hard drives. Then, I printed a hard copy and drove it straight to my office downtown, locking it in a fireproof safe that Gavin did not know existed. 2 hours later, I sat across from Daphne Rourke in her glass-walled office. Daphne was a shark in a Saint Laurent suit, a litigator who specialized in asset recovery and corporate fraud. She looked at the blown-up image of the signature and then at me. "Brianna, this is not just grounds for divorce," Daphne said, tapping the paper with a manicured nail. "This is bank fraud. This is identity theft. If we file this now, we can have him arrested before lunch." I looked at the city skyline, watching the traffic crawl below. I thought about the house, the accounts, and the sheer audacity of his plan. If I arrested him now, the company stock would tank, and the assets I was entitled to would evaporate. "No," I said, my voice steady. "Not yet." Daphne raised an eyebrow. "You want to wait. He is leveraging your financial future to fund his affair. I want everything." "Daphne," I replied, "I want the house. I want my share of the company before it crashes, and I want him to feel safe enough to sign one more thing. If we strike now, he fights back. If we wait, he hangs himself." "You are playing a dangerous game," she warned. "I know," I said, "but I am the one keeping score." 6 years ago, Gavin slid a prenuptial agreement across a mahogany table and capped his fountain pen with a click that sounded like a gunshot. The terms were brutal in their simplicity. Whatever asset was titled in an individual's name remained the sole property of that individual in the event of a divorce. He told me it was just standard procedure for a man of his trajectory. He believed that clause was his shield. But he forgot that a shield offers no protection if you are standing on a trapdoor. He thought he was casting me out into the cold with nothing but my clothes, but he had forgotten the panic of 2 years ago. When we purchased the estate at Arbor Crest, Gavin was terrified that a looming shareholder lawsuit would target his personal assets. Hide it, he had told me, pacing the living room. Put the house in a shell company. Keep my name off the public records. I cannot have a lien on my home. So I did exactly what he asked. I created Harbor Wren Holdings LLC. I remember the night he signed the operating agreement. He was distracted, watching a basketball game on the big screen, signing where I pointed without reading a single line. He asked if this would save him on property taxes. I told him yes. What he failed to read was Article 4, Section B, which designated me as the sole managing member with exclusive executive control for a fixed term of 7 years. Gavin is a member of the LLC, yes, but he has 0 voting rights. Technically, Gavin Cross does not own the house he is currently kicking me out of. He does not own the slate driveway, the security system, or the electronic gate codes. Harbor Wren Holdings owns them. And I am Harbor Wren Holdings. I sat in my downtown office with Naomi Pike, my CFO at Caldwell Ledger. She is a woman who finds joy in the brutal rigidity of contract law. She laid a document on the desk between us. Here is the residential lease agreement he signed to substantiate the tax write-off. Naomi said, smoothing the paper. He pays $12,000 a month to the LLC. He is technically a tenant, Brianna. And look at Clause 9. I looked. It was a standard clause I insert into all my client contracts, immediate termination of lease upon evidence of illegal activity conducted on the premises. The forgery, I said, the forgery. Naomi confirmed. He committed a felony on the property. You do not need a divorce decree to evict him. You just need a landlord's notice. I called Daphne next. She was already in motion. I am filing for an emergency asset freeze, Daphne said over the speakerphone, her voice crisp. The forged guarantee on the loan is our smoking gun. We are arguing that he is actively dissipating marital assets to fund a criminal enterprise. The judge will lock his accounts before he can buy a sandwich. I want exclusive possession of the marital residence, I added, based on the LLC ownership and the safety risk posed by his erratic behavior. Consider it done, Daphne replied. I am sending the process servers for tomorrow morning. Do you want security? Yes, I said. Contact Iron Key Protective. I want 2 agents to accompany the servers. Gavin likes to throw things when he loses control. I spent the rest of the afternoon back at the house, dismantling my home office. I was not packing to leave. I was stripping the room of anything Gavin could use to wipe his tracks. I pulled the hard drives from the server rack. I boxed up the physical ledgers. I took the backup router that stored the raw internet traffic logs. Down the hall. I could hear Gavin laughing on the phone, boasting to someone about his fresh start. He has no idea that the roof over his head is already mine. He thinks he is the king of the castle, but he is just a tenant who violated his lease. He gave me 72 hours to get out. I am using every single minute of that time to turn those 72 hours into an airtight indictment. The first domino fell at exactly 2 in the afternoon. My phone buzzed on the desk with a notification from the bank's fraud alert system. Transaction declined Cartier. $5,500. I leaned back in my chair, watching the real-time dashboard on my laptop. Gavin was likely trying to buy a sorry I got caught bracelet for Sloan, or perhaps a celebration of freedom watch for himself. A moment later, another alert popped up. Transaction declined wire transfer to Azure Sky Consulting. Gavin was panicking. I could see the digital footprints of his desperation. He was attempting to move money from our joint brokerage account, then the savings, then the emergency fund. Every single attempt hit the wall I had erected with the court order Daphne had filed that morning. Each failed transaction created a time-stamped log. He was not just failing to move money, he was creating a permanent record of dissipation of assets in real time. Keep trying, Gavin, I whispered to the screen. Every click is another paragraph in the affidavit. 10 minutes later, The attack shifted vectors. My laptop pinged with a security intrusion warning. Unauthorized login attempt account, Brianna private. Gavin was trying to hack me. He thought he knew my passwords, dates of anniversaries he had forgotten, or birthdays of relatives he never liked. He eventually guessed the password to an old email account I had left active on his iPad. He logged in, likely hunting for the evidence I had gathered, or perhaps trying to delete his own incriminating emails that he thought I had forwarded there. What he did not know was that the account was a honeypot. It was a decoy. The inbox contained nothing but junk mail and a few folder names like tax evasion proof that were actually empty. But the moment he opened them and hit delete, the system logged his device ID, his IP address, and the exact duration of his intrusion. He was no longer just a cheating husband. He was now officially a cyberstalker invading my privacy. Then came the performance. My social media monitoring tool flashed red. Sloan was live streaming. I clicked the link. The video was shaky, filmed on a phone held by a manicured hand. Sloan was standing in what looked like the foyer of a hotel suite, her face glowing with ring light perfection. "Hey guys, so, big changes coming," Sloan chirped, tossing her hair. "We are looking at furniture for the new place. Out with the old, boring energy, right." Suddenly, the door behind her slammed open. Gavin stormed into the frame, his tie loosened, his face flushed with a mixture of rage and terror. He did not see the camera. "My cards are dead," Gavin shouted, pacing the room. "Every single one." She froze them. That witch froze everything. Sloan tried to angle the camera away, her smile faltering. "Babe, I'm live." Gavin ignored her. He grabbed a bottle of water from the table and crushed it in his hand. "Let her play her games. It does not matter. She is the one who is going to burn. I made sure of it." The business loan. The $80,000. It is all on her head. I put her down as the guarantor. She is going to be drowning in debt while we walk away clean. I hit the stop recording button. He had just admitted on a live broadcast to 4,000 viewers that he had intentionally saddled me with the debt. It was not an explicit confession of forgery, but it proved malicious intent and financial coercion. I saved the file, backed it up to the cloud, and emailed it to Daphne with the subject line Exhibit G. By evening, the counterattack arrived. Gavin had hired North Brim Strategies, a PR firm known for reputation management, which was a polite term for victim blaming. The headlines started popping up on industry gossip blogs. "Sources say Lumen Vale CEO's wife instable. The jealousy that wrecked a tech empire. Is Brianna Caldwell mentally fit?" They were painting the picture of a hysterical, scorned woman destroying a visionary's company out of spite. My phone began to ring with requests for comment from reporters hungry for a catfight. I did not answer. I did not tweet a defense. I did not post a tearful video. Gavin was fighting a PR war because that was the only language he spoke. He thought public opinion would save him. He thought that if enough people called me crazy, the bank fraud would disappear. I turned off my phone screen, watching my reflection fade into the black glass. He thinks the battlefield is social media. I have chosen a different battlefield. My battlefield is signatures, statutes, and the cold, hard ink of the law. And in my arena, likes do not count. Gavin had always treated corporate governance like a suggestion rather than a law, and that was the crack in the foundation I needed to bring the whole structure down. He had forgotten a minor administrative detail from 2 years ago. When Lumen Vale faced a liquidity crunch, he had transferred 15% of his voting shares into a blind trust to secure a bridge loan. He paid back the loan, but in his haste to move on to the next shiny object, he never filed the dissolution paperwork to reclaim the shares. He assumed the trust was dormant. He assumed the trustee was some faceless bank clerk who would rubber stamp his decisions. He was wrong on both counts. The trustee of record for that block of shares was Sentinel Fiduciary Services. and Sentinel Fiduciary Services was a wholly owned subsidiary of Caldwell Ledger and Compliance. I did not just have a seat at the table. I held the gavel. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, while Gavin was getting a facial for his big launch party, I sent an email with the subject line, Emergency Board Session Fiduciary Breach and Executive Misconduct. I did not copy Gavin. I sent it to the independent directors, the general counsel, and the external auditors. Attached was a 40-page PDF containing the forensic analysis of his embezzlement, the proof of the forged signature on the loan, and the video file of him admitting to the financial setup. Then I called the lead partner at the auditing firm. I did not ask for help. I simply asked a question designed to terrify any accountant. Are you comfortable signing off on this quarter's statements, knowing that the CEO is using corporate funds to lease properties for personal associates under shell companies? The silence on the other end was heavy. I will need to look into that immediately, he stammered. I thought you might, I said, and hung up. That evening, I arrived at the Lumen Veil product launch 40 minutes late. I was not wearing the modest, supportive wife's beige cocktail dress Gavin usually picked out for me. I wore a structured black suit with a plunging neckline and diamond earrings that cost more than Sloane's car. I walked into the ballroom not as a guest, but as an owner inspecting her assets. The crowd parted. I could feel the whispers rippling through the room. Gavin was on stage, microphone in hand, freezing mid-sentence when he saw me. Sloane, standing near the front in a shimmering gold gown that looked desperate under the stage lights, marched over to intercept me. You have some nerve showing up here, Sloane hissed, blocking my path with a flute of champagne in her hand. Did you get lost on your way to the homeless shelter? This is a private event for the leadership team. I looked at her, then past her, as if she were a smudge on a window. The leadership team answers to the board, I said, my voice low and smooth. And the board reads the files I sent them an hour ago. Paperwork decides who stays and who is invited to leave. Sloane, not the dress code. Her smile faltered. The color drained from her face as she realized I was not embarrassed. I was in command. Before she could respond, Marcus Sterling, the lead investor and a man who controlled the majority of the venture capital flowing into the company, stepped out of the shadows. He looked pale. He took my elbow gently and guided me away from the music. Brianna, he said, his voice tight. The bank. They just called my compliance officer. They are flagging a loan guarantee, a big one. They say your name is on it. I looked him dead in the eye. I did not sign that. Marcus. I said clearly. Marcus closed his eyes for a second, exhaling a breath that smelled of expensive scotch and fear. He knew what that meant. It meant fraud. It meant the insurance policies were void. It meant the company was radioactive. I see, Marcus said. Excuse me. He did not go back to the VIP section. He walked straight to the exit, signaling his assistants to follow. Within 5 minutes, 3 other major stakeholders followed him out the door. The room was still full of music and laughter, but the money had just left the building. Gavin was still talking on stage, but he was preaching to a graveyard. My phone buzzed in my clutch. I pulled it out to see a text from Daphne. The judge just signed the order. Tomorrow. We do not ask for permission. We enforce. I looked up at Gavin, who was basking in the spotlight, oblivious to the fact that the floor had already fallen out from under him. I put my phone away and ordered a sparkling water. The show was over. Now it was time for the eviction. The morning sun filtered through the blinds, casting long, prison bar shadows across the floor of the master bedroom. I did not pack my clothes. I did not empty the closet of the designer gowns Gavin liked to see me wear, nor did I touch the shoes he had bought to ensure I matched his height at galas. Leaving those behind was a strategic choice. I wanted the visual of a sudden, panicked departure to feed his ego for just a few minutes longer. Instead, I packed a small, nondescript leather satchel with the only things that were truly irreplaceable. 3 encrypted hard drives. The framed photograph of my mother standing in front of our barn in Kansas. the fountain pen she gave me when I graduated. These were the artifacts of my identity, the things that existed before I became Gavin Cross's wife, and the only things that would matter after I stopped. I sat on the edge of the bed and opened the black binder one last time. It was a masterpiece of legal architecture. Inside was the deed to the property held by Harbor Wren Holdings LLC, the residential lease agreement Gavin had signed 3 years ago without reading, and the clause regarding immediate termination of tenancy due to criminal activity on the premises. Behind that lay the log of his illegal entry into my email account and the certified copy of the loan guarantee with my forged signature. I pulled out my phone and opened the home automation app. Because the house belonged to the LLC and I was the sole managing member, the security system was legally mine to control. I activated the internal audio recording for the kitchen and living room zones. On the screen, I watched the live feed. Gavin and Sloane were standing by the island. "I want to rip out these curtains immediately," Sloane said, her voice tinny through the phone speaker. "They are so heavy. I want everything white, open, airy." "Do whatever you want," Gavin replied, scrolling through his tablet. "She will be gone by noon. I told the guards at the gate to revoke her code at 12 o'clock sharp. Once she drives out, she does not get back in." I closed the app. He thought the deadline was noon. He was wrong. I sent a text to Naomi Pike. "Execute access revocation protocol at 9:17. That was the exact minute Gavin usually walked out the door to his waiting car. I wanted the system to lock him out precisely when he was most confident. Then I messaged Daphne. "Send them in. Target time is 9:15. I gave myself 2 minutes of buffer. The process servers and the Iron Key security team would be on the porch exactly 2 minutes before his digital life went dark. I walked downstairs. The click of my heels on the hardwood was the only sound I made. In the kitchen, the scene was a domestic caricature. Sloane was leaning against the counter, sipping coffee from my favorite mug, the one with the chipped rim I had refused to throw away. Gavin looked up, his expression bored. "You are still here?" he asked. "You are cutting it close. Brianna, do not make me drag you out. It would look bad for the neighbors." "I was just thinking," Sloane added, blowing on her coffee. "Maybe you should leave the keys on the counter. It would be cleaner." I stopped at the doorway. I did not look at the view. I looked at the man who had built a glass castle on a foundation of sand. "It is funny," I said, my voice calm enough to lower the temperature in the room. "You hate paperwork. Gavin, you mock it. And yet, you live entirely by its permission." Gavin scoffed. "You are talking nonsense. Just go. You are like a ghost haunting a house that is already sold." "I am not a ghost," I said. "I am the landlord." Outside. The crunch of heavy tires on the gravel broke the silence. It was not Gavin's town car. Through the window, the grille of a massive black SUV came into view, followed by a second vehicle. They stopped right at the front steps, blocking the driveway. Gavin frowned. "Standing up." "Who is that? I did not order a car service." I looked at the clock on the microwave. It was 9:15 on the dot. I smiled, a genuine, terrifying smile that finally made Sloane lower the mug. The doorbell rang. It was not a polite chime. It was a demand. "The gates of the kingdom are opening," I said softly. "But the people walking in are not your subjects." Gavin yanked the massive oak door open with the impatience of a man who believes the world runs on his schedule. He expected to see his driver standing there, cap in hand, ready to whisk him away to his empire. Instead, he found himself staring into a wall of black wool. 2 agents from Iron Key Protective stood like statues on the porch, flanking a process server who held a thick manila envelope as if it were a loaded weapon. "Mr. Gavin Cross," the server said, his voice flat and disinterested. He thrust the package into Gavin's chest. "You have been served!" Gavin stumbled back a step, instinctively grabbing the envelope. He ripped the top open, his eyes scanning the bold headers on the legal documents. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Emergency asset freeze. Motion for preservation of evidence. Notice of immediate lease termination. "This is garbage," Gavin shouted, his face turning a blotchy shade of red. He shook the papers at me as I stepped into the foyer. "We have a prenuptial agreement, paragraph 4. What is mine stays mine. You cannot touch this house." Brianna. "My lawyers will laugh this out of court by lunchtime." I stopped at the bottom of the stairs, clasping my hands in front of me. I looked at him with the detachment of a coroner examining a cadaver. "You are right," I said calmly. "The prenup protects every single asset titled in your name. The problem is, your name is not on the deed to this house." Gavin froze. Before he could sputter a response, Daphne Rourke stepped out from behind the security team, her heels clicking sharply on the threshold. She held up a document with a blue cover sheet. "This property is the sole asset of Harbor Wren Holdings, LLC," Daphne stated, her voice cutting through the air like a scalpel. "You, Mr. Cross, are merely a tenant, and per the morality and criminal conduct clause in your lease agreement, your tenancy is hereby terminated for cause effective immediately." Sloane rushed forward from the kitchen, her eyes wide. "You cannot just kick us out. I have rights. I have been living here for weeks. This is my home, too." Daphne shifted her gaze to Sloane, looking at her as if she were a minor inconvenience. "You are the guest of a tenant who no longer holds a valid lease. That makes you a trespasser. You have zero legal standing here." Sloane opened her mouth to argue, but Daphne raised a clear plastic file folder. Inside, the magnified image of the forged signature was clearly visible. "We also have the affidavit regarding the $80,000 loan guarantee Mr. Cross forged in Brianna's name." Daphne continued. "We have the server logs of his illegal entry into her private email accounts. And we have the recording of your live stream where he admitted to financial coercion. We have enough to file criminal charges with the district attorney within the hour." The blood drained from Sloane's face. She looked at the file, then at the man standing next to her. "Forged," Sloane whispered, her voice trembled. You said you handled it. You said it was your money." "Sloane, shut up," Gavin snapped, sweat beading on his forehead. "They are bluffing. I am not going to jail for you," Sloane said, her voice rising. She took a sharp step away from him. "I did not sign anything. I did not know about the forgery. I am not part of this." She was abandoning the ship before it even fully sank. Gavin looked at her, stunned. For the first time, he realized he was standing alone. "Fine," Gavin snarled. He fumbled for his phone, his fingers shaking. "I am calling the bank. I am moving the funds. And then I am calling the board to have you fired. Brianna, you think you can play this game? I am the CEO." He dialed. He waited. He pulled the phone away from his ear, staring at the screen in disbelief. "Access revoked," he muttered. "That is impossible." He dialed human resources. He listened for 5 seconds, and then his arm dropped to his side. "The board met at 8:30 this morning," I said softly. I presented the evidence. "You have been suspended pending an internal investigation into embezzlement and fraud. Your corporate access has been scrubbed." The silence in the hallway was absolute. Gavin looked at the security guards, then at Daphne, and finally at me. The arrogance was gone, replaced by the hollow look of a man who realizes the ground he stands on does not exist. "You have 60 minutes, I said, my voice ringing with the authority of the rightful owner. "You may pack your clothing and your toiletries. You will not touch any laptops, tablets, or documents. Every electronic device and piece of paper in this house is now sealed evidence for the forensic audit. If you try to remove them, the security team will detain you." I checked my watch. 59 minutes. Gavin. The 60 minutes evaporated, and with them, the last vestiges of Gavin's bravado. He stood in the center of the foyer with 2 suitcases. The sum total of his life at Arbor Crest reduced to what he could wheel out the door. The panic had settled into a desperate, cloying attempt at negotiation. He looked at me, his eyes wide and pleading, trying to summon the charm that had worked on investors for a decade. "Brianna, please," he said, stepping toward me with his hands open. "Look at this place. We built this together. You cannot just throw 10 years away over a mistake. We can fix this. I can fix this." I did not flinch. I did not step back. I simply looked at him. "Save the explanation for your deposition. Gavin," I said. "I am not the jury." His face twisted. The charm dissolved, replaced by the ugly snarl of a cornered animal. "You set me up," he spat, pointing a shaking finger at me. "You knew about the lease terms. You let me sign that loan. You watched me walk into a trap." "No," I replied, my voice steady. "I did not make you cheat. I did not make you forge my signature, and I certainly did not make you steal from your own company. I just recorded what you did. I am not the trap. Gavin, I am the mirror." I pulled a single sheet of paper from the folder Daphne held. "This is the addendum to the Harbor Wren Holdings operating agreement," I said. "It dictates the automatic termination of residency rights for any tenant who commits an act of financial fraud involving the property or its members. The moment I filed the evidence with the court, your key code was deleted from the server." Gavin looked at me as if I were a stranger he had never met, rather than the woman he had slept beside for years. The realization hit him that the admin wife he had mocked was actually the architect of his demise. "When," he whispered, his voice cracking, "when did you become like this? You used to be soft. I became this way the first time I learned that without proof. The truth is useless," I answered. "You taught me that power is just a story you tell until someone checks the facts." "Well," I checked them. Near the door. Sloane tried to slip past the security guards. She was clutching her handbag tightly, but I noticed the bulge of the crystal whiskey tumbler, my favorite one, sticking out of the side pocket. She wanted a trophy. She wanted to win something. Anything. "Put it down," I commanded. Sloane froze. She looked at the Iron Key agent standing next to her, his arms crossed. She looked at me. "It is just a glass," she muttered, her eyes darting around. "It is an asset of the estate," I said. "Put it down." With a huff of petulant fury, she pulled the glass out and slammed it onto the entry table. It rang out with a sharp, clear tone. "Escort them out," Daphne ordered. The security team stepped forward. Gavin and Sloane turned and walked out into the bright, unforgiving daylight. The sound of their suitcase wheels rattling over the slate walkway was loud and rhythmic. It was the sound of a kingdom collapsing, not with a bang, but with the clumsy friction of plastic on stone. At the bottom of the steps, just before the black SUV that would take him to a hotel he would have to pay for himself, Gavin stopped. He looked back at the house. He looked at the towering windows, the stone facade, the life he thought he owned. Then he looked at me, standing in the doorway. "This isn't over," he called out, though he sounded like he didn't believe it. "It is," I said. "You thought power was the loudest voice in the room. You were wrong. Power is paperwork. It is the right signature, on the right date, with the right authority." I held out my hand. The head of the security team walked up the steps and placed Gavin's house keys and the gate remote into my palm. "The locks have been rekeyed electronically," the guard confirmed. "The bank has confirmed the freeze," Daphne added, checking her phone. "The process servers have filed the affidavits. If he tries to contact you, we file for harassment. If he tries to access the accounts, he goes to jail." I nodded. I stepped back inside the cool, quiet foyer. I looked at the spot where Gavin had stood, and I felt nothing but a profound, cleansing relief. I took hold of the heavy oak door. I did not slam it. I closed it firmly, with intention. The mechanical click of the deadbolt sliding into place echoed through the hall like a judge's gavel ending a session. He built an exit strategy. I built a case file. And in the end, only one of them held up in court. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from today. So please leave a comment below and share your thoughts on Brianna's revenge. Did Gavin get what he deserved? If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to the Lily Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and hit that hype button to help this story reach even more listeners.